Have you noticed that ADHD and having a neurodivergent brain is kind of trendy nowadays? I don't say that to be rude. I say that because every time I am scrolling through my social media, whether I'm on Instagram or TikTok, I hear something or someone say, something about ADHD. And so today I actually want to talk to you about how you can actually improve your ADHD, but better yet, your focus utilizing your menstrual cycle. One thing we know to be true is that really your brain is changing throughout your menstrual cycle. And I can only imagine how that paired with a neurodivergent condition such as ADHD might be impacting the way that you're able to work in your life. And as always, I'm here to inform you and not to offend you. I am a menstrual health and wellness coach and really an expert. So, that's my expertise. However, I have found myself extremely interested in ADHD. If you are somebody who experiences ADHD and you often feel like your energy and your focus are fluctuating throughout the month, this is the episode for you. Before we even dive in, I want to clarify something for you. I know for a fact that ADHD can probably feel challenging, but once you understand your biology, once you understand how your body actually works and twerks, you can actually utilize that to work for you rather than against you. So today we're going to be touching on the different phases of your cycle and how your cycle can impact your ADHD symptoms. Not only this, but we're also going to discuss how to work with these shifts to really optimize your focus, productivity, and of course, your emotional balance. So, the first thing I want to talk about is really understanding the menstrual cycle. Here's what we know to be true, right? The first phase of your menstrual cycle is called menstruation. This is when you're on your period. Post period, but pre ovulation, we are then in something called the follicular phase. This is typically when your energy levels are starting to rise, and maybe you feel as if the fog that you may have had on your period that is also lifting. The third phase of your menstrual cycle is called ovulation. This is a main event of the menstrual cycle. This is when you're usually feeling the most energized, the most sociable, and really creative. Then we have your fourth and final phase of your cycle, which is the luteal phase. Your luteal phase begins the day you stop ovulating and it goes until the next period begins. Usually for women, this will be days. It can last about 11 to 14 days, but usually this will be, depending on the length of your cycle, it just starts after ovulation. So, for women who have ADHD, these phases can significantly impact your symptoms. Hormonal fluctuations, particularly the shift in estrogen and progesterone, play a role in cognition, play a role in your mood and your focus. See, estrogen tends to support dopamine production, which you know is key for your focus and your motivation. And just in case you don't know, dopamine is one of your many feel good hormones. We have dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins, right? So, with that being said, estrogen plays a key role in dopamine production. In the second half of your menstrual cycle, your estrogen actually drops. Okay. And so some research shares that dopamine as well as serotonin production is a little bit lower. Dopamine production and serotonin production. I just want to reiterate that. So, something many people with ADHD struggle with is the ability to focus in the second half of their cycle. Because progesterone, on the other hand, right, is dominant in the second half of your cycle. And that can have more of a calming and more of a, even arguably a sedative effect, which can explain why you feel more or less mentally sharp during certain times of the month. One of the things that is going to really play into how you improve your focus, your cognition, your mood, and overall emotional balance with ADHD is how you can support your estrogen and progesterone levels throughout your cycle. By default, the first half of the cycle, estrogen is dominant. That is just how you are wired. Whereas in the second half of your cycle, your estrogen is often supposed to be lower and your progesterone higher. And there's a nuance in here when it comes to hormonal balance, but I want to stay on topic. I want to really delve into some of the ADHD friendly tips for the different phases of your cycle. So, when you're on your period, right, when you're navigating your menstrual phase, your energy levels are often lower and you often notice a fogginess or just trouble concentrating. So, rather than pushing against this natural slow down, give yourself permission to rest and reflect. Use this time to really review. And personally, I always tell people this is the perfect time to do any planning or ideating. And that's because some research shares that there's 25% more connectivity between the right and left hemispheres of your brain. So you can either choose to rest and reflect, right? If you're somebody who's more of a ADHD person who's intuitive and you just want to listen to your body, you may choose to rest and reflect. However, if you're somebody who has ADHD but you like to be productive, right? What you may want to do is use this time to actually create new ideas or just brainstorm, right? It's all about ideation. Scheduling the tasks that require less focus and more of a like chill approach to things is going to be really, really beneficial. So, doing things like your admin task or just simple like organization things, okay? In the second phase of your cycle, your follicular phase, days 6 to 14, depending on how long your period is, as your estrogen levels are rising, your energy levels are also rising. Your energy to create and really be clear is chef's kiss during this time. So, this is the ideal time to begin tackling projects that require focus and innovation. Your ADHD brain may feel less scattered and more capable of doing deep work during this time. So, I highly recommend you use this window as an opportunity to dive into any task that demands that you problem solve. Period. Dot. End of story. Again, we want to do some high focus tasks during this phase because your brain is primed for clear thinking and creativity. Throughout the third phase of your cycle, which technically speaking, ovulation literally may last 16 to 32 hours max, depending on who you're talking to and what research you're facing. But estrogen peaks around ovulation. This is a time of heightened energy and sociability. This is a time where you're probably going to feel more confident, a lot more articulate, and this is the ideal phase for any type of collaborative work, meetings, and public speaking. ADHD symptoms like, feeling impulsive may also be a little bit higher. So, this is something where you just kind of want to be a little bit more mindful, okay? So I highly recommend you're scheduling your networking events, you're pitching to different brands. If you work with brands, maybe you are meeting with different clients. If you're like a realtor or something, like doing, oh my gosh, if you're a realtor, doing your showings when you're ovulating, girl, seal that deal. Like closed, period. You know what I'm saying? Okay, anyways, the fourth and final tip for you when it comes to your luteal phase specifically, because we're in the fourth phase, is realizing and remembering that progesterone is rising and estrogen drops. You might experience more symptoms like brain fog, irritability, and really just feeling overwhelmed, especially if you have ADHD, because the symptoms tend to heighten in response to stress. Okay. So this can make focusing really difficult, but it's an excellent time to do detail oriented work. I came across an article where they were sharing that just after ovulation, there's this primal shift in your prefrontal cortex that happens where all you are actually thinking about is like nesting kind of. And so, with that being said, this is the perfect time to do detail oriented things. Shift from high focus and high energy tasks to more of those laid back, routine oriented things, the laid back, more month end based things. Whether it's you closing out your family budget, you closing out the end of the month budget, different things like that when it comes to like business. You know better than I how you can utilize this information, but I think it's just so interesting how the brain actually changes throughout the menstrual cycle and how you can use this to your advantage as somebody who may have ADHD. And I want to take a quick second to teach you an acronym that I love to teach my clients. It's called PACE, stands for plan, act, create, and communicate. And then lastly, evaluate. PACE is actually for each phase of your cycle. So in your menstrual phase, you are going to plan. In your follicular phase, you are going to start taking action and really analyzing things. In your ovulatory phase, you're going to communicate, you're going to connect with other people, collaborate, just like really be that confident, best version of you. And in your luteal phase, you're then going to begin to evaluate. That's a simple way to remember all of the things I just threw at you. But with that being said, let's talk about, how cycle syncing or aligning with your cycle, as I like to call it, really can help you with ADHD. So when you're tracking your cycle, whether you're using an app, you're using a journal, you just in the vibes, intuitive, right? You're becoming more aware of patterns of behavior. And so one of the things you want to realize is that tracking your cycle is basically going to help you understand your own patterns. From there, you're able to plan ahead and organize your month accordingly. If you are anything like me, you love a good planner. Like, hello, we love a good personal planner around here, right? But not only this, it's going to allow you to honor your body's rhythm. One of the things I've noticed is that people who often come to me with mood conditions, whether it's just dealing with like mood swings, irritability, anxiety, maybe you're dealing with PMDD, right? They often come to me, and when we look at their schedule, they're overcommitted. They're overcommitted and not honoring themselves, and they don't understand what they're doing to their body hormonally. If you're somebody who has ADHD, but you're trying to be everything to everyone, right? There's a chance you may be overcommitting. That overcommitment could actually increase cortisol, decrease progesterone, and cause an imbalance of estrogen, which can make focusing even more difficult, let alone making your period more problematic. So it's really imperative that you, now that you have this level of awareness about ADHD and really improving your focus using your menstrual cycle, you begin to plan ahead. And you also honor your body's rhythm. Go when you feel as if you can go and stop when you know you need to stop. And I fully understand that the way our society is structured is it doesn't really leave space for those of us with periods to like have as much liberty and flexibility as we may desire. But this is also your invitation to take personal responsibility and figure out how you can create that within the workflow, right? Within the societal structures that we currently have. I promise you it's possible. The last thing I want you to do, or just to kind of consider, is adjusting your environment. Creating ADHD friendly routines and workspaces can be a blessing. Period. Dot. End of story. Especially when you see like kids who have ADHD, you often see like their parents figuring out ways to make things more sensory based or help them with like the signs. Do the same thing for yourself. I say this with love, but you're not above the routines that can actually make your life a lot easier. While I'm somebody who does not have ADHD or neurodivergent brain, here's one little thing that I do to set myself up for success. It could be as simple as this, okay? Every single night before I go to bed, I go to my kitchen and I put 1 liter of water in my electric kettle. I make sure that that's great and prepped to go for when I wake up the following morning. And I also make sure that my French press is cleaned out so that when I first wake up in the morning, I can go right to the coffee station, push the little kettle button, and then from there, grab the coffee, take a fourth of a cup, put it in the French press, and then boom, right? Out of sight, out of mind. It's such a simple little thing, but it's so simple that most people wouldn't do it. So if you're somebody who has ADHD, that is something you definitely want to consider doing. If you're a woman who has ADHD, the key takeaway here is that your menstrual cycle can be a powerful ally in managing your symptoms. So instead of fighting against the natural shifts in focus and in energy, I want you to learn how to flow with them. I want you to learn how to truly optimize your flow, as I like to call it. I hope today's episode has been supportive to you. And if it has, I would so appreciate it if you subscribe to the podcast, whether you are listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or you're watching here on YouTube. And I would really appreciate if you would actually leave a rating, a review, or even a comment. And if you know you're like, I really love this, I need more of it, I highly recommend you check out Period School, where you are going to discover the path and really the secrets to peaceful, predictable, and PMS free periods. Period. As always, love you, mean it.